riches ruined the foolish, but some are ruined by the sound of love's own drum. Still you believe, but you can't say why. It's better to fail than never try. Oh, it's better to fail, yeah, than never try.
Thanks, Blaine, for all the hard work to make this happen and bring it together. And I know you worked closely with Len to get the plaque prepared. And I know John would be overwhelmed, and he would say, "No, I don't want this to happen. Don't do this." So we all know. So on behalf of all of us, John, this is what you get for leaving us behind, and we're going to do this. So we're delighted that Blaine, you took the lead and did this, and the club has backed it. So maybe just in terms of order, we'll first of all introduce and welcome Linda, just in case you don't know who Linda is. So Linda, thanks for...
Thank everybody for coming.
Linda,
That's my speech.
Linda, we want to...
I'm supposed to bring you out because Roger's filming. Say that again.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
And so we'll just say thanks to Roger, who stepped up to take the video feed. And I think, Linda, you'll be sending this to the girls.
To the
right?
girls.
Yeah. So do you want to come out again and say hi to them?
Say hi to the girls.
Yeah.
But Phil, I told Linda that John was in charge of the weather, and look what he's doing. He's sending that sunshine right in here.
That's good. That's good. Well, I thought maybe it would be helpful just to say a few words and then invite some stories, because I know gatherings like this always, particularly when we're dedicating something on behalf of someone who's meant a lot to all of us, it's usually helpful to tell a few stories, and I'm sure there's a few here. John was completely instrumental in making the snowshoe trail system happen here with a whole bunch of you, actually. I think many of you tromped out and hung flags and pruned and brought everything together. A couple of things I'll share, and then I'll turn it over to the floor, and then I'll pass it over to Blaine and Linda to do the unveiling, which is right behind us here. This nondescript.
We hope so, anyway. It was there yesterday.
So, that's right. Yeah, that's right. John's giving us the weather, and he's going to pull a funny behind us as well. So I just wanted to say, as I was coming up, I realized, first of all, I'll be honest, I'm not sure I'm completely ready for this. There hasn't been a day that's gone by when I haven't stopped and missed John with every ounce of my being. So I'll see how this goes. The other thing I was thinking about as I was walking up the snowshoe trails was, it was John's vision when he started working on these, and when we started working on all the other trails and greenway projects that have happened and created the trail lines, of getting folks working together, because the thinking was, if we could get people outside with a certain thoughtfulness, just to slow down, pay attention, that we might actually start looking after the place that we live more, and that we'd fall in love with it more, and we'd take care of it more. And so all of these trails, these snowshoe trails here, the ski trails, everything that John was a part of, came with a whole dose of humility, and it came with a big dose of reverence. And I just thought about that as I was walking up the snowshoe trails, because they really do that. I love skiing, but I also love going on the trails, because there's just you suddenly take a deep breath and you start to slow down. And I think it's fair to say, Linda, that maybe 15 years ago when John said, you know what, I'm going to start walking every day, that these trails may have even saved him.
Oh, I'm sure they did, yeah.
So I remember after the memorial at your place just over a year ago, I think it might have been you that said, I hope everyone realizes John wasn't any kind of saint.
And I still say that.
So I thought, yeah, that's awesome. Well, we knew that, but also, but something about the walking was part of what, I think for John, was part healing and part invitation to all of us. So I hope as you head back and take the trails back or ski back, that you take a moment to stop and listen, because that's what John always did for me. And as a mentor, I found anytime I was out walking with John, or skiing with John. After a while, I realized, oh, we've been talking for about an hour, but it was just me. and John never told you to be quiet. You just eventually fell silent. There was a steadiness and a patience that just meant you fell quiet, and you started to pay attention. And then before you knew it, you started to fall in love with the place. You also start to eat stuff, and he'd make you try mushrooms that he thought wasn't poison. I'd eat it. Well, that was pretty good. Linda goes, were those the ones that made us sick last night? So the other thing I wanted to share was that there's just something awesome about this, and there isn't a day that goes by when I think of John. And there also isn't a day when a little part of me still kind of angry. You know, John, we're not done here. We've got lots to do. And I thought, you take this, man. Because there was a group of us, and we're all talking about what the climb should be called. And I think Jim said, well, we should call it John Coffey's Trail. And I made the mistake of going, oh, we could call it Coffey's Climb. And a whole group of us, and Glenn went, yeah, that's cool. Let's call it Coffey's Climb. And Jim and a few others said, well, I don't know, John Coffey's Trail would be better. We're like, no, Coffey's Climb. It's kind of and Jim's like, but then people might think it's got to do with coffee and not John. You know? I think about 500 million emails later, hey, Blaine? Back and forth. And
yeah, we just don't know how to spell coffee. That was our problem.
But it was one of those meetings where, like, all of a sudden we were, like, wrestling over, should it be called Coffey's Climb or John Coffey's Trail or the Coffee Trail? You all know John. He had the shorts ready and the boots ready for exactly that kind of conversation. He would have been out of there so fast. And he hated meetings, and partly for that. And I thought as we were having the debate, I thought, take that, John. we're having a meeting arguing over what to call this thing over you. So I just thought, awesome. Well, you'll see John's name on the trail here, and it's pretty special, and it's pretty special to be walking all the way up to Cease's cabin and knowing that every time we do that, we'll take a moment to stop and think of John, but I hope stop and think of this place that John loved and cared for deeply. So John, this one's for you. Well, I wonder if anyone else has any stories, snowshoe stories or otherwise, that might invoke John's already.
Phil, I have one. It has to do with when you said quiet, and you started to get quiet. This ski area is my church, and I would say the inner sanctum of this church is the old growth, and it was John who introduced me to the old growth. Same thing happened, group of people walking in there, and it got quiet.
Yeah.
And you started to connect with the magic of that place.
Like a cathedral, I think John sometimes talks about.
I have two. Another John and I went with him on his request to go and clean up a trail on the north side. And we drove up 110 in the winter time when it was a sheet of ice for 3 kilometers. And this old pickup truck with no chains, he negotiated this thing up, managed to turn it around on a piece of ice, and then we clambered and scrambled to where you wanted to take out some logs that had fallen across a bicycle trail. And on the way down, it was the scariest ride I've ever had. This old truck had no power steering, so John was constantly going this way. With us crammed in beside him and the elbows flying, going sideways until it went across and got a front wheel in the snow and then went the other way. And no one spoke.
Quiet.
Another reason, though.
And Clint, he was smiling all the way.
He even smiled when the wheel fell off his truck.
Yeah, I think Bruce, Linda, John, you were part of the famous.
And the dog who suffered more than the rest.
And the other one is that for those of you that snowshoe up here, although John's name is on it and he did GPS it and got us as high as you could go on this hill, because that's what he loved to do, he would never have softened it the way we have.
Yeah.
If it was John's trail, you'd be going over trees that were up this high and scrambling around windfalls and things like that, and that would be the trail. Not this nice thing that's going to go straight. However, I love it. It's a great trail.
That brings to mind a few stories of, I think, Kathy, three of us in there going, no, if we just do it straight on it, we go this way. It's John used to call it, who needs a Stairmaster when you can go for a walk?
And the hill on this trail up to Caesar's cabin, he insisted we go up that hill because there was a view up there.
Yeah.
So we actually named it Tea Hill.
Tea Hill, that's
It was
right.
the place to stop and have a cup of tea.
For the longest time, that was the furthest I ever would get to before we'd have to turn around and go back. It was
I always had pleasure on ruining John's serenity when he was out skiing. So I'd see him in the distance with his orangish, yellowish jacket. So I would go into stealth mode, sneaking up behind. And then just as I got up to him, I'd yell, "Truck!" See how high he was going.
Yes, Alex, he always spoke fondly of you. That's awesome.
He always, in our early days of snowshoeing, I used to always have the pack loaded with gear. And he'd always go, "Why do you have that shovel in there? You know, why are you going to carry that shovel?" Well, we're on a steep and deep descent and the windfalls and everything, and he tumbles, and he's buried under a tree. And he's sort of waiting there. "Alex, can I borrow the shovel, please?" He never bothered me about what I carried in the future.
We should remember that he was a custodian of Mara Meadows too. And I never got in there with him, but my wife was in a few times. And she tells me that you had to pick daisies to clear the meadow for the daisies.
I was in there a couple of times with him. He handed the responsibility over to my son, but that was a place he loved and cared for. He would walk in there every week of the summer up to his hips in muck to measure water levels.
Snowshoe out to pick the daisies in the water.
That's, I had actually thought, oh, maybe I'll get a copy of John snowshoeing, and that was the photograph I thought of, as a picture of John picking the daisies in Mare Meadows, but he had phoned and said, I need someone to come and hold the rope. And I'm like, what are you talking about, the rope? He says, well, I can't get out of this one clump. It's the last clump. I figured it out. I'm going to put my snowshoes on, the big ones, and I'm going to snowshoe across. But I need someone to hold the rope in case it doesn't work. And I was like, you need someone like at 6 in the morning. I'm like, I am definitely going to be there, but I'm not holding the rope. I'm holding the camera. Sure enough, he showed up in his shorts with these snowshoes, and it worked. I got this great picture of him snowshoeing with this big bouquet of daisies.
So is the meadow free of daisies?
It's totally free of daisies because he hand-picked every single one, and now Jeremy goes in with folks and just keeps it clear.
Some of us helped him.
One day.
That's right. There was a few.
It's probably compulsory activity. It was.
A few days walking around with bags.
Yeah, but they take over everything. You don't want them.
Yeah, and I'm mad at him too because he was going to show me a whole bunch of trails yet.
There's still more to plan. Well, he would be mad if we didn't continue to just keep caring for those.
He showed me how to work the GPS and he left before he did. Well, he gave you a
Talk to
short
Clint.
course on
Clint's
the
been
lake.
on a crash course training. Keith's been doing a little self-training too.
Self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of things that John didn't finish off, there's lots of them, but we're hopefully when you see the plaque, there's some mentioned there too. But one of the things that you snowshoers came up on was the Lost in the Woods. When you left Moose and headed into Lost in the Woods, he had that ribboned out, but it wasn't cleared out. So, and of course John wouldn't clear it out anyways, but some of us are weaker snowshoers, so we finished that off. And then he had made a silk purse out of a sow's ear. because some as you finished Lost in the Woods, you came up on this side of the main road where it crosses at Gullen's Gully. That area was accidentally found on a snowshoe trail expedition that didn't turn out quite as I expected. But anyhow, John turned into a connection up to the South Hub, and it is, and it's now part of the Lost in the Woods trilogy, or no, I guess it's a duology of two trails. But and John made me climb this coffee climb 3 times, and Anne, I guess, is the person who said she went up, and I said, well, I guess if Anne's done it, I should go up there. So that's when I ended up doing it just this last couple of weeks, and found out there was a sign section that wasn't signed, so John wouldn't require the sign, because John's ribbons, some of those historic ribbons you see on that coffee climb, John hung them there. So yeah, it's going to be a great trail. It's I don't know what's underneath the snow, but it's a nice trail right up the center between Sky Trail and the main road. So I can see it getting lots of use. So thanks, John.
Self-service on it.
Sorry? Oh yeah, right.
I can tell you, John, that wasn't planned.
Sure it wasn't planned.
But I saw the T-hill, and when you see these where you come to a tree that's across the trail and it's cut on an angle, that's John's work, because he didn't like them cut straight across. He wanted to cut on an angle to show you where the trail went. He taught me that. So.
And that sign that says 1.5, no, what's it say, $1.5? If John put that sign up, it would say $0.5.
Yes. And one more hill.
That sounds like there's about 10 stories behind that.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Well, I wonder if there's any other recollections before we do this unveiling here.
Yeah, well, this is a 2-hump hill. You get over the first hump, oh, well, we're right there. Then
Yeah.
there's the second hump. So,
It was always a 2-hump hill with John, except the one time I went out with John and Alex, and then it somehow, between John and Alex, they could turn the 2-hump hill into a 25-hump hill. Plus, that storm's not going to catch us before we do that. Yeah. Well, friends, I know it's joy and sadness still that always emerges, at least for me, in these conversations. But how good to kind of raise a little bit of John, we're still a little annoyed at you.
exactly.
And to be able to say that in such great respect and with all love, even though we know he wasn't a saint.
His daughters would agree.
We miss John a lot, and it's going to be great to be able to bring folks here and do the coffee climb, and on your way up, just pop in and read the plaque and tell the stories and keep adding to them, because I know John would want to know that. John wouldn't. This gathering is already about 5 minutes too long for John.
He wouldn't have wanted it at all.
Yeah, he's moving on. The one thing I did want to say though is there anyone else though before I move it on to Blaine here? Well, the one thing John loved little quotes and sayings, and we've been reading Wendell Berry on and off while when John was at home and I'd visit, and Jeremy actually had given him a Wendell Berry book, or maybe you had, Ryan. Yeah, and it was interesting because he was actually getting a bit punchy with some of the stuff that Wendell was writing and stuff. There were some great conversations out of it, and so every so often, he'd bring a quote out and say, "Oh, you better read this, Phil." We'd be out in the middle of the Anstey somewhere, and so I thought, well, I just happen to have a quote here. It just happens to be a Wendell Berry quote, so maybe I'll share this Wendell Berry quote, and then I'll pass it over to Blaine. Yeah, Blaine, why don't you read it for us?
All right, I'll read it, thank you. It's John Coffey, obviously. Larch Hill Nordic Society is pleased to honor the memory of John Coffey. February 8, 1948 to September 1st, 2012. See, my eyes aren't so I can't read. Who was a tireless worker on the Larch Hills trails and other trails in the Shuswap region. In particular, he laid out the snowshoe trails that come to this shelter and go beyond. Trail construction started in 2005 and is ongoing. His influence was felt on the north side of the mountain, where his daily winter trips on snowshoes were an example for us all. He was a volunteer warden for the BC Parks, protecting the Mara Meadows Ecological Reserve visible off the South Loop ski trails. The Larch Hills Traverse, which goes by this shelter on the way to Sycamoose, is another of his projects. And some of you may have the opportunity to walk the Anstey Highland Traverse that John devoted 6 years to developing, and is ongoing to the Shuswap Trail Alliance. Honor John by walking in his footsteps. Plaque dedicated by his friends and family, February 22nd, 2014.
I know.
It's amazing.
Roger, would it be good for the camera still to kind of get everyone together?
Yeah, I'll do a bit of a pan and sort of look into the camera, folks, and go anything cheesy. I'm sure John would appreciate it.
Do you prefer we stay balanced? Is what you're saying?
I think so.
That's it.
David and Jim.
Okay, well here, I'll get everyone to look this way now and we'll get a
Yeah, right.
team shot. All right.
A team shot.
Excellent. Good looking group. Well, thanks, Blaine, for bringing us together and all your work to do this. We should give Blaine a hand.
Sounds really funny.
The MC is the hard job. Thank you to the MC.
How did the kids like this?
Oh, yeah.
I'll try to warm up.
Always in and out of love somewhere, between sleep and waking. The Sanskrit songs, last night's dream, and the toll of life's been taking. There's talk of mysteries, places roamed by poets. Heaven and earth are meeting, and fallen tears best show it. Make way for the living. Oh, make way. Make way for the living. Make way. Bright against the black sky, in the shadow of the moon. Oh, in the shadow of the moon. Make way for the living. Oh, make way. Oh, make way for the living. Oh, make way. Thinking no mystery should go unchallenged we get. The flowers bloom outside the window for no one's sake, and yet morning arrives, so gorgeous like a great dog young. Somewhere on a back street, the night chose to become the dawn. against the black sky in the shadow of the moon.
Oh, in the shadow of the moon.
Make way for the living.
Oh, make way, yeah.
Make way for the living.
Oh, make way, yeah.
Amber around your neck, silver on your arm, a blue light in your window, girl, you have a certain charm. Look now as the sky falls and rises up again. Look at yourself here in the afternoon rain. Make way for the living.